On through the rest of chapter 1, they're conquesting, and they start to run into failure where they're conquesting, they're taking over, they're conquering different nations who live in this land, who God has given them. He's given them this land as theirs, and he told them to go in and take over the land, all who live in it. Now they're starting to have failure in their conquest. They're not casting the people out as they should. They're allowing them to remain around them. And into chapter 2, now the angel of the Lord went up from Gilgal to Bochim. Keep this verse very near to us. The angel of the Lord. We're going to talk about this angel this morning. The angel of the Lord went up from Gilgal to Bochim. And he said, I brought you up from Egypt and brought you into the land that I swore to give to your fathers. I said, I will never break my covenant with you. And you shall make no covenant with the inhabitants of this land. You shall break down their altars. What kind of angel is this that can speak such a thing, that can tell such a thing, that he's the one who brought them out of Egypt? It's the angel who's the one who's entered them into this covenant. Who is this angel this morning? And he continues on and he says, so now I will say, I will not drive them out before you, but they shall become thorns in your sides, and their gods shall be a snare to you. As soon as the angel of the Lord spoke these words to everyone in Israel, the people lifted up their voices and they cried. The angel of the Lord charges them, being out of fellowship, with not listening to the voice of God, and the people of Israel weep. Then later on in chapter 2, Joshua dies. He dismisses the people, and he dies at the age of 110 years old, down in chapter 2, verse number 8. And then this generation comes up, just setting the stage this morning. In verse 10, all that generation and all of those who worship and live in Joshua's generation, all of them have now died. It said as long as Joshua was alive, they worshiped the Lord. They're out of fellowship, they're out of step, but they knew they had enough sense, they had enough connection to God, they had heard enough about what God had done in their history to continue to worship him. But now a generation arises that's not connected to what God has done. They're not aware. They haven't seen it. They've lost sight. They've lost the vision. A generation has arrived, has come up. And it says all that generation also were gathered to their fathers. And there arose another generation after them that did not know the Lord or the work that he had done for Israel. It was a generation that came that didn't know God. I wonder this morning if some of our generations have missed a beat, have missed a step, that the testimonies have not filtered down, if the word has not gotten through, and somebody somewhere along the way has this whole generation that have forgotten, they have not heard, they've lost the sight of the struggle, they've lost the remembrance of the testimony of what God has done. And a generation is now existing in Israel that doesn't remember, that doesn't know, that doesn't have the connection of what God has done in their history, their ancestry. And now a cycle starts, and the people in verse 11 of chapter 2, the people of Israel did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. That's what happens when the generation loses their connection. When they don't have mom and dad and grandmother and granddad and aunts and uncles sitting around and telling them about the goodness of the Lord and how we made it over and what we've overcome and how good God has been. When they stop hearing those testimonies, now evil has come up in the sight of the Lord, and the people are serving the Baals, the gods of those that are around them. And it says in verse 12 that they abandoned the Lord. They went after gods from among the gods of the people that they were surrounded with. They bowed down to them, and they provoked the Lord to anger. Just setting the stage this morning. They abandoned the Lord, served the Baals and the Ashtaroth. So the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel, and he gave them over to those who would devour them. And they did devour them. And he sold them into the hand of the surrounding enemies, so that they could no longer withstand their enemies. Whenever they marched out, the hand of the Lord was against them for harm, as the Lord had warned, and as the Lord had sworn to them. They were in terrible distress. A generation had come up that did not know the Lord, did not know the testimonies, and they abandoned the Lord, and They started following and taking on the gods of those around them. And God was moved to great anger. The people are distressed. And so he raised up judges, those who saved them out of Israel, out of the hand of those who plundered them. Yet they did not listen to their judges. This is a summary of the entire book of Judges. This is the summary of what was going on historically at that time. It's the summary of the days that we even live in right now. But God would raise up a judge. He would raise up someone to help the people, move them, bring them back up to the standard, just like a judge does today. They look at the crime, they look at the situation, and through meting out a determination of a fine, of a citation, of years of incarceration, they're restoring, they're building back up to the standard. The same way, that's what the judges were doing here. They would look at where Israel was, and God would raise them up. He would use them to bring them back up to the holy standard of God. But they didn't even listen to their voice.